There we go. Okay. Definitely happy, privileged to be here with you all this now afternoon. As I was sharing with Kamika and Peggy, it is a truly a privilege to be able to talk to the providers, to talk to those that are working intimately with young people. Um, Being at this state, but coming from the provider side of things to the state into state service, it's often hard to still see those faces, but it is definitely something I carry with me, and why having conversations like this and continued conversations like this is so intimately important to me and at greater service to those very same young people that I'm used to looking at face to face and providing services to. So, without further ado, I really want to get into what it is we do at the Department of Labor for young people, and in terms of their entrance into work, where they may be on their pathway and journey towards career, and how we come alongside them. We being the network of 12 youth services managers and coordinators throughout the state. So, one of the first things to note, and you'll see later on in the presentation, is youth services does not exist at every single America's Job Center across our state. There are 26 job centers. However, there are 12 um, youth services managers, and they often cover, well, by that nature, they cover more than one county. And so we'll get into how youth services is configured. We'll get into hopefully as much as the nitty gritty of the services that we're required to provide, as it relates to WIOA, WIOA being Workforce Innovation Opportunities Act. I will refer to that as either WIOA or WIOA. It comes off the tongue a little bit easier saying WIOA instead of saying Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act every single time I'm trying to refer to that. So that's the phrase of the day, WIOA. And so that's what I'm talking about. That's the act that we oversee as the state, um, almost as a pass through from our federal government sources to our local partners. And so, what do we do? I'm sure you're wondering. Um, and what we do is provide oversight at the state level of services that are being provided to youth under WIOA or WIOA for their desired entry into the world of work. Our services, the services that are provided, are truly individualized. There are, broad buckets of program elements that we're supposed to provide, but truly, when a young person comes into WIOA services, let's say in Prince George's County, their experience and the services they receive should not be cookie cutter. They should be predicated on their own barriers. They should be predicated on their own goals. So we have to take into consideration both sides. What are the barriers that have given them challenges to entering the world of work, and subsequently, what are their goals into a career pathway or into the world of work? And so these are some of the program elements that are included. This is the comprehensive list. There are 14 program elements that each local jurisdiction are required to provide under WIOA. Where it gets tricky is how those services are provided from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, or who even provides those services within the same jurisdiction. Prince George's County, I can speak to probably on a level greater than any other jurisdiction, is because I was a youth services, WIOA youth services provider in Prince George's County. And so in Prince George's County, you actually have three providers. You have Latin American Youth Center, you have, at the time, Eckert Connects, and then you also have the Keys program, which is operated by your local workforce board, being Employed Prince George's. And so amongst those three, these 14 program elements are available. Whether or not a young person receives any of these program elements refers back to what I said previously. If they have an individual goal that applies to one of these areas, then they would then be connected to that service. And so it's not, for example, I'll take financial literacy education. Um, if a young person needs assistance with budgeting or needs assistance with understanding how to manage credit, then that service would be provided or that program element would be provided. The second one under that, entrepreneurial skills training. If a young person does not have the desire to go into entrepreneurship, then they would not be given that service of the entrepreneurial skills training. Now, that isn't information about entrepreneurship. That is actual education, resources, workshops, training that leads them down the pathway of becoming an entrepreneur. And so, if their goal is entrepreneurship, then they would be provided the entrepreneurship skills training. Information about that is provided inclusive of labor market information or other supportive services. And so there are ways that they can still get that information. But these are the actual tangible things that young people are being provided. What we're widely known for, of course, are our paid work experiences. These are summer youth employment. This is largely what young people are aware that is going on at the job centers or in their county as it pertains to work. The first thing that comes to mind are paid internships or summer youth employment. But as you can see, there's so much more that is offered to young people as they are working to try to figure out how to access the world of work and what is the next step on them for them along a career pathway. And that is what makes youth services different from the adult services. The youth services program elements are going to speak to specific barriers that young people have in entering the world of work. And so it's important to note, and we'll get into what some of those barriers must be in order for them to participate in youth services. But truly, a youth, especially in Prince George's County, it's like kind of a misnomer because largely the programming in Prince George's County is for the out of school youth population. That is young people that have either graduated or somehow or another disconnected from the public school system. So whether it's by graduation, whether it's by at the age, the compulsory age that they have dropped out, whatever that is, however they have disconnected from the public school system, that is when they are eligible for the out of school services under WIOA. In Prince George's County, again, they do have some services for the in-school youth population, primarily through the KEYS program, which is then, as I mentioned, operated by Employ Prince George's. But again, there must be a barrier to employment, whether they're in school or out of school, that is causing them difficulty in connecting to the world of work. Youth are also unique in the fact that they can potentially co-enroll in the adult program. Co-enrollment happens generally around training. The adult program has a greater capacity to provide funding for programs that lead to certifications. And so with that, there sometimes is the necessity, again, individually. This is not a broad sweeping, everybody, this happens with everybody. This is speaking to the individual need of the participant. If they have that training desire, if they are prepared, the youth program can come alongside with support to address their barriers, whereas the adult side of the house can then provide the funding necessary in order for them to pursue their training desires. Training also has to meet certain criteria. We'll talk about our website, the Maryland Workforce Exchange, in a few minutes. But generally speaking, on the Maryland Workforce Exchange, there's a list of what's called the eligible training provider list. This is the vetted list of providers across our state that have training that is going to lead to a industry recognized credential. There are tons and tons and tons of companies and organizations that are offering training to our young people that may not necessarily be leading to an industry recognized credential. If you want to make sure that a young person that you may know or that you are working with is getting training that is going to lead to the actual credential that they need in order to have that job, I would implore you to utilize that eligible training provider list found on our Maryland Workforce Exchange website, because those providers are the providers that are doing what they say they're doing and providing the training and certification examinations that are going to give young people the certification that they need. Okay, eligibility. One of the things, again, as they are exiting the world of entitlement and into the world of eligibility, WIOA, WIOA Services, lives in the eligibility world. So there are things that they have to meet. There are criteria that they have to meet in order to receive services under WIOA. The first two are our age requirements. If they are in school, if they're still enrolled in school, the minimum age is 14, the maximum age is 21. If they are out of school, if they've already graduated, or if they have dropped out of school, they are eligible for, meaning they have not received their high school credential, they are eligible for services from 18 to 24. The other thing to be said, there is no time limit for them to complete an outcome, provided that they stay active in 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 working towards their goals. We have in our system a 26-year-old in school youth that started in the program when that person was about 16 years old, but that individual has stayed active. I do believe at this point they are working towards a master's degree, because they are still working towards goals, because they are still staying connected, because they are still achieving outcomes. We keep them in the system because they are doing a benefit and a service to our performance. But once, and they're 26, they're beyond the age of entrance of enrolling into youth services, but that does not mean they have to be done with achieving their outcomes by that age. So here's where we get more into, again, those barriers as well as the criteria for enrollment. This is federal funding, and so there are the requirements of certain documentation that is needed in order to enroll in services. Chiefly among them, of course, name, date of birth, social security number, proof of residency. That does not, now in the proof of residency piece, it is permissible for a young person that has a green card or a person that has right to work in the state of Maryland, or through the federal guidelines, that they could be eligible for services as well. Again, that requires a deeper look into the potential eligibility of that young person, but it does not mean they are completely not eligible. It just means we need to take a deeper look and see where they are in terms of the documentation required to qualify for services. In school youth. Okay, wait a minute. Something happened. 1 second. I'm sorry.
Did your screen freeze?
Yeah, it did. Sorry, I've got my um it is important to note, especially when it comes to in-school youth and a in-school youth with a disability, that disability can be substantiated or verified by their IEP or their 504 plan. What that also means is if a youth or young person is utilizing their disability to qualify for WIOA services, they do not have to prove income eligibility. They are one of three um, barrier groups, and I don't like to say it like that, but that's how it's termed. But three barrier groups that do not have to prove income eligibility. Individuals with disability is one, foster care is the next, homeless individual or runaway is the third. Those young people do not have to prove income eligibility for in school services, because in school services does require, well, they both do, but moreover, the in school youth, why it's a different conundrum is because those young people are under the age, traditionally under the age of 18, which means when it comes to income eligibility for an in school youth, we are often looking at the parent's income. And so the parent's income would have to meet the low income qualification in order to be eligible for WIOA services. I felt like that was a lot. Let me back up and state it one more time. For in school youth, there is a requirement to prove income eligibility. Because our age range for in school youth is 14 to 21, oftentimes those in school youth are under the age of 18. Being under the age of 18, we have to utilize the parent's income to determine that income eligibility. Conversely, if they have a disability, they're in foster care, or they're homeless, they are homeless or runaway, they do not have to prove income eligibility. We can utilize what would then be their income. Um, and so that's important to note, especially with working with youth that are in transition. Youth that are in transition generally are those that have a disability, that potentially have an IEP or have a 504 plan. And so that documentation will allow them to receive these in school youth services without having to prove the income eligibility. It is also important to be reminded, as you are looking to potentially connect your young people to services through the youth services program under WIOA, the IEP, as we look at it, is a document that has a 1 year of valid. It is valid for 1 year. And so if a young person is exiting school, and let's say their IEP meeting was the September prior, that document is then only going to be a valid document for them from the time they graduate until that following September. Which means if they're going to connect to youth services and um, utilize that document as their proof for their disability, we've got to, create that sense of time is of the essence, because that document is not going to be valid beyond that 1 year time frame. Okay. Out of school youth. Again, same mixture of barriers for the out of school population. The difference being um, they're disengaged from school either by receipt of their high school credential, or they have disconnected or dropped out, if you will, again, they still can't connect with WIOA services until they're beyond that age of compulsory attendance, being 18 in the state of Maryland. If they do have their high school diploma, they also have to, in order to qualify for WIOA services, is they have to be basic skills deficient or an English language learner. Again, both of those can be captured um, in an IEP or 504 plan or something of that nature coming from the school. But again, it's only going to have that year's time frame of validity or being valid so that they can utilize that documentation to access WIOA services. The local service providers also um, provide an assessment of reading and math skills, which would then also be used to determine whether someone that has their high school credential, whether or not they're basic skills deficient. And there are other assessments that can be given to substantiate a basic skill deficiency or English not being their primary language. The other caveat to out of school services is they can be, the barrier can be that they need additional assistance to enter the world of work or complete an educational program. That is the least of barriers that is utilized in any given area. There is a federal statute that says only 5% of the enrolled participants for a given area can utilize solely that that barrier in order to receive services. So you rarely see this bottom barrier being utilized within a jurisdiction because of the federal statute that comes along with that. So how can you get connected? Sure, you're wondering. The first way to connect with services under WIOA is Maryland Workforce Exchange, which I've talked about a little bit before in the presentation. There is a lot of information on MWE. Things from labor market information that is going to tell you the particular industries that are in high demand in a particular jurisdiction. This is important because it also coincides with the eligible training provider list. By law, we can only provide funding for the high demand occupations in a given local market. This is important because you may have a young person. We've had this happen to say. I'm trying to remember the exact story. Oh, for example, a young person that was from the shore counties, from Wacomico and or Worcester, where Ocean City is. And down there, there's a huge maritime and there's a huge tourist economy. And so that may not apply to a young person that lives in Washington State. Washington County. The training resources or the training dollars to access the maritime job training program would not be valid in Washington County. And so some of that information is all contained within MWE. It will point you directly to the in-demand occupations and the in-demand industries county by county, which, our young people can be transient. We've got young people that are in Prince George's County, but might be right down there near Waldorf, where they're, very close to Charles County. Or you may have a young person that's on the northern part of Prince George's County and it's very close to Anne Arundel or Montgomery County and may cross those lines for the sake of work. What I can say is that our youth services managers do a very good job of talking to each other in those cases. Um, and so, but it is also important to know as you're guiding young people on making decisions about the resources that are available to them, making sure that those resources are truly, in fact, available in their local area. And so, the Maryland Workforce Exchange again is an excellent resource to be able to 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 be able to find that information. Not just that, one of the things that I like to say about MWE is that the employers that are on MWE are employers that are hiring. Our business services team does an excellent job of keeping this updated with positions that are available in our state, in the state of Maryland, in your area. And so um, again, we one of the things that I heard when I did the presentation to the larger group was that we need the Department of Labor, which I represent, needs to do a better job of helping people understand how to navigate MWE. And so I am in the process of developing, sort of a webinar of sorts that will help you understand where information is, how to access it, when should a young person begin to utilize MWE. My short-sighted answer to when is now. Now is the time to have young people getting on MWE, getting logged in, not necessarily registering, but there are parts of the site that you can, just look through the information, get them familiar with it, get them understanding that this resource is out there as they begin to investigate the world of work. And this would guide them, I feel, much better than anything else because this is their state. This is their state specific information. And it's not just, broad information about the world of work. As I mentioned, we have 12 local areas throughout the state that are allocated the funding to provide the youth services programs, and they are color coded. We code them, put them together by regions. And as you see, and I'll go through it very quickly, the light pink, that would be our Western Maryland. Frederick is self-contained. Carroll and Howard County are known as Mid-Maryland. Baltimore County is in self-contained. Baltimore City is self-contained. Hartford and Cecil, that's known as our Susquehanna region. Montgomery, Prince George's, Anne Arundel, they are self-contained. Charles, Calvert, and St. Mary's, that is our Southern Maryland region. Kent, Queen Anne, Caroline, Talbot, Dorchester, that is our Upper Shore. And Wacomico, Worcester, and Somerset is our Lower Shore. Again, we are centered around gorgeous Prince George's on today. And so, again, within Prince George's, there is a direct contact at the local workforce board. I will be happy to provide her information once we're done. She will be then able to connect you to the appropriate program, either based on where the young person lives in the state, and based on whether they're in school youth or an out of school youth. One of the providers within Prince George's County works very well with Latino youth. And so, there are various ways that a young person can connect. And it, again, the whole goal, the whole motive behind it is meeting them where they are, but also making sure that Prince George's County is a vast county geographically, and a young person that lives in Laurel cannot get to serve, it is not best suited for them to try to get all the way to Riverdale in order to access services. It may be better for them to go to Largo, though they can go anywhere because they can access services throughout the county, wherever they may be. Um, but I know in Prince George's, they're working very hard to make sure that the geographic vastness of Prince George's County is accounted for, by placing providers um, in different areas in the county. And that's it. This is my contact information. Um, I am more than open to email. Email is the best way to connect with me. If you have a question, if you have a situation, you can't quite get to the right person, reach out and I will do my best to make sure that that issue that that young person is having um, gets the attention that it deserves. Hope the information was helpful. I know it's a lot, but I'm gonna be quiet and open the floor for questions.